All right, it is 6:30. We're gonna start our work session with open forum. Rules for open forum, 3 minutes per speaker. Open forum shall not take more than a total of 15 minutes. No complaints about individual staff members. All presenters will conduct their business in a manner that meets community standards for decorum. The board will not take action on items presented in an open forum. Does anybody wish to speak during open forum? All right, then we're gonna dig right in. Brian?
I just thought we'd start with showing, the principals will start with showing kind of where their staffing lineup would be as of today. Of course, there are still things that could and may change one way or the other, but to get an idea or answer any questions the board may have on what the principals are kind of projecting as of now. So Bonnie, if you want to start with Hinckley Elementary.
All right, well, you can, my lineup there, the highlighted ones are kind of what is changing. ECSE is not changing. K1 special ed service provider right now is a 0.5. We are pulling some time down from FES, a quarter, so he'll be a 0.75 up in Finlayson as well as down in Hinckley, servicing majority K1 kids. As you go down, ECSE, that one also services Finlayson Elementary Special Ed for early childhood if the needs warrant. ADSES services, we're also pulling 0.75 down from FES and making that a 1.0 to a 0.25 because they service about 9 kids max, and we service about 100, maybe about 75 kids down in Hinckley. So we're pulling that down to have a almost a full-time academic provider. As of right now, it's not in the budget to make that a new position unless Brian says that I can. If not, I'm gonna have to try and put that in on a para who is currently on staff. So that'll be a juggling of FTEs and paras, but title teachers are going to remain the same. The big change that you'll see, the 4th kindergarten teacher, we almost have to have, we had 60 kids in preschool this year, and we know that we'll have some that move in, so we'll be over 60, which would be huge kindergarten classroom, so that will be the move from Finlayson down to Hinckley. So we'll have that 4th one. The one that I would like to add, and based on numbers, would be our 1st grade position, and the rest remain the same. So questions as you're looking at that?
Go ahead.
How many are in kindergarten right now this year? So that will be going in 1st grade.
That number is there as well. There's 60.
The 1st grade one we haven't added yet. We're kind of waiting to see where everything shakes.
We'd like to add.
Yeah.
I mean, that would put us from at 15 versus the 20-ish. So that's Hinckley's lineup. Questions, concerns? Great, we got here by 6:45. All right. Perfect. Moving on to Finlayson Elementary, kind of things that I've already talked about, making Jason or special ed services up there 0.75 combined with 0.25 of ADSES. Kelsey Smith, who did ADSES, would roll into a gen ed classroom. ADSES can be done by anyone, so it can be, right now I envision it being with our SPED provider. So I guess the big question right now that I have it on the bottom of a para ad. So one staff member down, but adding a para back in for preschool. And I guess what I would need to know from the board is, right now we have one student enrolled in pre-K. At what point do you want me to hire another para for that position or try to pull internally? I did get the 2 paras that are up there right now. I got their schedules. We could look at how we can cover internally, doing some schedule changes, but I guess that's what I need to know from you is, at what number do you want me to say I'm going per, hire a para for FES preschool?
I definitely think there has to be a minimum.
What would your recommendation be?
Well, right now, we're looking at between 8 to 10 kindergartners. I guess my initial thought would be somewhere between 3 and 5 is my own initial. I mean, it's so hard because to have one support staff for 3 kids, but also having a teacher who runs 2 grade levels.
Is this a full-time position?
It would be a full-time position, yeah. A 6.25 hour a day position, just like our current paras.
The early childhood, is that gonna be half days or 4?
No, we decided at the board meeting that would go back to 4 full.
Okay, 'cause
Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't fix that, I had the lineup done prior to.
Okay, so we are
Yep.
back to that.
Yep, we're
window.
back to 4 full days
And
and
that's,
combined with kindergarten.
and that's equal to what we're offering at Hinckley Elementary.
Yep, 4
Okay.
full days.
Okay.
And 3-year-old program on Wednesdays. So what do the boards thought? What is your recommendation? What do you want me to do? You the boss.
I guess we're not in the classroom with those kids, I don't know how many it takes to. I mean, your recommendation is 3 to 5.
State requirements for VPK are 20 in a classroom, it has to have a para, so that's our max of 20,
That's a max.
that's a max. Now, I might have to call somebody at the state, and Joe's our VPK coordinator, so he may know this, on a combined classroom, does that look different when they're combined with kindergarten? I don't know. I don't know as if we've ever ran a VPK combined classroom, as far as your knowledge.
And we're looking at 8 to 10 kindergartners?
That's what we're looking at. We have 6 right now. 7, does that one we moved? I think 7. We'll have another one moving up from HES. So we're looking at 8 to 10 next year kindergarten. 1 registered right now. The census doesn't show a whole lot more, but you never know.
We don't know what open enrollment, with changing the bus boundaries like we did, we don't know that stuff yet. If we get open enrollment from northern part, closer to Sandstone, they would go to Finlayson, we just don't know some of that yet.
Yep, we know one of the VPKs will be kindergarten next year up there, so that's 2 moves up there already.
So what would a fair number be? Total of 15, or we're allowed 20, right?
15, and then between the 2.
I don't know, but you're dealing with them every day, so,
I'm not.
yeah.
And the hard part, I'm imagining,
You can talk, I mean,
is a 3-year-old may not have the same maturity skill as a 5-year-old. We wanna make sure the kindergartners get what the kindergartners need. So those 3 and 4-year-olds will need some supervision, or there'll be some dividing and conquering, obviously, and we wanna get the kindergartners what they want. need, sorry. But, you know, where's that fine line that
Yep.
we can deliver appropriate service for the kindergartners and make sure the 3 and 4-year-olds are also getting adequate stuff? Maybe some 4-year-olds would be ready for some kindergarten stuff. It's just kind of hard, from what I can imagine. I've never done it elementary either, but
There's
can
some of that
imagine-
para support that we currently have that can easily be pulled and pushed back onto the classroom teacher. That's, we do it in Hinckley all the time. But some of that's built-in IEP support, so we can't pull that. But some of those that they're working at just one-on-one with, those can easily be pulled. But we couldn't guarantee of having that whole para there that whole time, you know.
I think the hard part is not how many kids are there, but that we've got 2 grade levels again, and they each deserve their own appropriate curriculum. It's not that one teacher can't handle 10, 15 or more kids, it's that we have 2 grades worth of kids to teach, and they have 2 completely separate curriculums. And they both deserve what is age appropriate for them. It's not about us not being able to teach 10, 15 kids, it's about delivering an appropriate curriculum to them.
But the other part of it is we have to be fiscally responsible. Cause we're not a private school, right? I mean, what is fair that they can have 15 kids and teach 2 different curriculums and being fiscally responsible.
I think one thing going in our favor with the extra, if we look at extra numbers, is the quality of our staff at Finlayson. I think they're capable of really doing well. And whether it's fair or not, I don't know, but.
I mean, I agree, Leo. No,
I don't disagree.
it's how many hours do we have in a day?
Right.
You know, the kindergarten reading curriculum alone is 2 hours of just kindergarten reading curriculum, and then they have math. It's just a matter of, do we have enough time to give both of these groups of kids adequate curriculum? That's really what it comes down to.
So I guess there still has to be a minimum.
So 3 to 5 range.
8 to 10, 3 to 5 would put it at
15,
15,
Yeah.
15.
Cause my concern too is if we have a pair for, then for 2V, 3 and 4-year-olds, how does that transcend then to the Hinckley Elementary staff where they're looking at, okay, well now I have 15 and I only have 1 pair. Or
For
don't
some of the
have
point is that they're all at the same level,
Yes.
not
One
where
or 2 grades.
the 3, 4-year-olds get just lost. You know, there's such a,
Yeah, that's at least from,
That's what we'll have to
that's the
call.
biggest difference is 15 at Finlayson is 2 different grade levels. Or 15 at, yes, the numbers are the same, but they're all 1st graders, or all 2nd graders, or it's just hard.
That's the question.
Connie, only 3-year-olds on Wednesdays?
Yes, yep. Which is consistent with Hinckley as well.
Are there any, student teachers that we can check to see?
We try to take everyone that comes to us with the hope of then keeping them eventually. I haven't seen any schools reach out, but I don't necessarily see that.
I think what we've ran into with even brand new teachers, I mean, they're getting multiple offers across the board, and I think they're gonna run that into that same scenario with anyone. Everybody we've just interviewed, they have multiple offers.
Yeah. And there's a bill at the legislation to maybe pay student teachers, so that may, to help fill the teacher shortage. I don't know if that's gonna pass, but they talked about that in their last semester. So it's just student teaching, they could maybe do it for pay instead of paying to do it. So that, student teachers could become even harder to find. But we'll see.
So we can't vote or make a motion, but we can give Bonnie direction.
And And I think one of the things, like Joe and I were just chatting about, like, we'll have to call the state and see if when those kids are combined, when VPK is combined with kindergarten, does that include, you know, are they then included in that 10? Cause the ratio is 1 to 10 in VPK.
What we could do is
So-
gather that, we have another meeting in 2 weeks. You know, we could then vote or make a motion
We
recommendation.
won't post for para positions for Hinckley, we'll have plenty of openings, for a while, so.
So if we wait 2 weeks to give a voting action, we could maybe at least know what the law is, or get more feedback, or knowing that we probably wouldn't post in the next 2 weeks anyway.
Right, not for pairs.
I guess I just worry you said a lot of people come in that first few weeks of school or right before school, so we wait, and then all of a sudden there's an influx of
Right.
5,
Yep,
10
that's-
Yep.
kids.
Then it might be
Well-
hard to find a para.
Right. Then everybody's already,
I think it's gonna be hard to find a para.
Regardless.
We're living,
Regardless.
yeah, we live it all
We're
the
only
time.
2 short in Hinckley so far, I mean at the elementary. For the rest of the year, so.
I mean, it's just been a little. And no thoughts.
Yeah, I guess if you guys can put your minds together and kind of give me a number of what you're thinking, we'll do some checking with the state. Is there any other input that you wanna give in your thoughts?
No, I just don't want us to sound like we don't want more than 10 kids per, I mean, we're willing to take more kids, it's just that division in curriculum that is the hard part.
And it might be a really dicey schedule, you know, it may have to be where you're teaching more than 1 grade level, two grade levels. I know we had kind of looked at a schedule last year where it frees up a little bit more time, but you're teaching more than 1 grade level, so. I mean, depends on, we can get very creative like that too. As long as the kids are getting what they need, it does put a little bit more on staff where they have to learn more than 1, 2, or even 3 curriculums, but. If the kids are getting what they need, I guess that's. So we'll look into the state requirements and what that looks like for a combined classroom, and then you guys can put your mind together. When do we wanna say we want a specific para? I think Angela's right, if we have a number moving forward, and we can kind of post for that if we want it right away, at least we get that one filled, but. Those are my 2 lineups.
So then at the regular May board meeting, you'll come with a recommendation of what you think is a minimum. And then, you and Joe can figure out the state law or the laws regarding pre-K combined with kindergarten.
Sounds good.
Is that fine with everybody?
Any other questions on the elementary 2 lineups? And I know we'll talk some more when we get further down the agenda, but anything more specifically for Bonnie on her current ideas or thoughts at both Hinckley and Finlayson? Okay, Ms. Hankey, you are up.
Wait, I do have one question, I'm
Never
sorry.
mind.
At what point, Bonnie, I'm looking at 4th grade and you have 69 students. What point do we look for a 4th section for 4th grade?
I don't know, I think the older grades, it's a little bit more manageable at 23.
Okay.
The real fact of the matter is, if I went 4 sections for K1 and 4th, we wouldn't have Phi Ed or music or something. So I would be out of room. So I think 23 is manageable. At 4th grade, I can do some research with local schools to see kind of what their numbers are and what maybe what they set as a limit. I know there's no limit, but
Yeah.
you know, if legislation passes, then we're kind of in a whole different boat anyway, but. for
Yeah,
class
there's
sizes.
legislation that right now, the House has passed their bill, which in there, I think it gives, board and teacher bargaining units the right to negotiate class sizes. The Senate, it was supposed to talk through the House's bill, make their changes, and then it goes back to committee. That's one of the things that that, districts are watching is, are they gonna leave in a class size minimum? Are they gonna leave it up to negotiations, or are they gonna take it out? I believe the House one is still in. Now it's going to the Senate, and by in, I mean it would be a negotiation thing between HFEA and the school board when we get to negotiations, where negotiations would kind of dictate class sizes all the way from kindergarten, up to 12. So that's one that we're watching, just, is the mandate gonna be there right now, so we know what we would have to do for staffing, or is it gonna become a negotiation thing and we may not know until we get to that part of the school year? So that's one of the things districts are watching, because it will impact all of us, on what we would have to do for staffing, so hopefully we'll know some of those answers in the next week or two. Okay. All right, Ms. Hinckley.
All right, so my staffing is pretty much very similar to this year. Kind of some little minor tweaks would be, we did eliminate one EBD special ed position. In this new model, because of just class sizes, we are able to do our ADSES reading within our English teachers. So 2 hours of English will be done, 2 hours of ADSES reading will be now done with our English teachers, and it's either gonna be our 7th or 8th grade. They're gonna decide between the two of them who wants to do it. So Michelle, our smart mentor, who's doing 2 sections of ADSES reading, will not be doing it next year. We'll be doing it within our English teachers, so that each one of them has a full FTE. So that's one small change there. I'm trying to think what else.
The other big one, at least in the calculation, so the first 2 columns on the right were how I did that. Kim did the math for Joanne nicely. I never did the math for Joanne, meaning, I'll look at this very first one. Kim has 3.72, I had 3.85. Really, the staffing's the same, just if they're teaching some ADSES classes, there's some of that gets reimbursed from special ed funding. So Kim has taken that out already. I hadn't taken that out because I just knew Joanne had already done that, and Kim and I hadn't talked through that all the way. So even though those greens maybe look smaller, the staffing's the same, just the percentage is taken out, because they may be teaching an ADSES class, and we get different reimbursement for that. So that's just the way Ms. Hinckley did it versus the way I did it. It's gonna wash out the same way when Joanne does that and puts it into our expenditures for next year. So just if you're wondering why those are green and different, the number of teachers is the same, it's just they may be doing the ADSES classes.
Something that doesn't show up in there is that next year we're probably not gonna have very many 6th assignments. So there will be a little bit of savings there, and that is due to the fact that there are some elective classes that only had 8 kids register. There was one that had 5, one at 6, a couple that had 8, and so we are not gonna be offering those classes next year just because we don't have the enrollment to make it fiscally responsible to add those classes. So we are down a few 6th assignments just due to some electives, and I can tell you what those electives are if you'd like. So Native American Literature only had 8 students, so we're not gonna be offering that. College Chemistry only had 5. Wildlife Ecology only had 8. College Art had 8, and College Painting had 7. And then also, he was hoping to do 2 choirs, a Jaguar choir and a concert choir, and we only had 8 and 8, so we're gonna still combine that for just 1 choir for next year again, and hopefully he's gonna try and grow that program into being to have 2 choirs eventually, but we just don't have the numbers yet to offer 2 choirs. So those are some of those 6th assignments that we're not gonna be offering just due to the low enrollment for next year. So that's kind of that. Any questions on staffing?
Are those classes offered like PSEO if kids wanna take?
Chemistry, I'm sure, I'm not sure on, I don't know for sure on those other ones. Chemistry is usually offered PSEO, that kids would have the option. I'm not sure about the college art or painting or the Native American literature class. I don't know if they come out of Pine Tech or not.
Yeah, I don't know that either. I can find out though. 2 other kind of things that I was hoping for before budget, all the budget stuff, but Empower, we have a waiting list of over 36 kids
So if there's a way to add another teacher for next year, that's something that I would like to do or hoping to do if miracles happen. Another thing I was kind of hoping to maybe so we have a 0.46 adds this behavior, and I was hoping to maybe redistribute. Bonnie and I talked about maybe doing some creativity and adding to that position and having a behavior interventionalist along with the ADSIS behavior to do more proactive, getting in classrooms, supporting teachers in the classrooms and things like that. But with all the cuts, it's probably not on the table, but that's just something that I was hoping that maybe to do for next year. So those are just two things that are not in my staffing lineup that I wish I had. So I just wanted to share those things with the board.
The Empower one brings a little different twist, just because kids who go to an alternative program come through with more funding from the state, because there's more after school time that Empower kids are eligible for with credit recovery and things like that. So a typical elementary kid weighs whatever the state formula is, that's what we get for an elementary kid. A high school student gets 1.2, there's more classes, which, you know, they don't have one teacher with them in 7th grade, they go to 7 different teachers. So there's just some more staffing that go with high school kids, plus to help fund after school activities and things like that. So that's why the state weighs those higher than elementary kids. Empower, there's legislation or for alternative kids that it may be bumped to 1.4. It hasn't passed yet. So we're kind of keeping our eye on that too, because Empower has been in the past, helps bring in some additional revenue just because the kids bring some more money with them from the state allowance. So we're watching that to see, especially with a waiting list of 30 kids. Some of those kids are our current students, so we're not missing out on all 30 of those kids, but we are missing out on some possible new, you know, not that it's all about revenue, but those kids are missing some opportunities for alternative learning and things like that. So that's one thing that we're watching to see, and you know, other things that may come out of the state or may not. Something that hopefully we could look at, but we're not there yet right now with what we do know.
We did have some kids move to an online school that would have went to Empower if they would have been able to get in. We did have a couple of kids that just dropped out. So if we had 2 teachers this year, we would have had more kids in the building that really wanted that learning opportunity, so.
And financially, it's in the positive, right, with all the extra funding. If we get that many kids, we'd be in a way making money, right?
We could, especially if it does get raised to 1.4.
What about if it isn't raised?
I'd have to do a little more, depends if they're currently our student or not. If they're currently in our school, it's just the same, you know, it's not additional revenue, but if it's kids that are not our current students, then yes, it would be more revenue.
How many can that building hold?
Fire code is 30, so if we had 3 staff, you know, 27 kids.
And how many are there now?
Is it 17 right now?
Yeah, 17.
So really, we can only bring on 10 more students no matter what.
Correct. One thing we did talk about is if they just had 2 teachers, it'd be some uniqueness how we had handled the kind of behind the scenes stuff, but we are looking to see if we can have 2 teachers. Yeah, but I don't know that there's just some extra things behind the scenes that the teachers don't do. There might be some having to be creative or fill that missing part, you know, when they're going through the teaching and the individual projects and things like that, but maybe we could have 2 teachers, but we kind of didn't get through all that today when we met with the Empower staff.
So there's no open classroom space in the high school building?
I don't think you have any open classroom space, do you?
We have a couple small rooms that could possibly use. Show off. They're not full classrooms though. They're not full classrooms though. No.
If the funding comes with those students, I mean, when we have space, I thought it was more we couldn't find staff for it.
We couldn't find staff
For
this whole year.
0.5.
But
It was only listed as a 0.5.
we hadn't even, before that, when we had it as a 1.0 to start the hiring season about a year ago, we started it at 1.0. back last April. Then we couldn't find anyone, so we had moved our paraprofessional to a smart mentor to kind of help with that, but they're not a teacher, so they can't do everything a teacher can do. Then we tried this year to help with the waiting list to go with a 0.5, and we had no one apply. Because if you remember, we had that money for a distance learning teacher, and when we couldn't do distance learning, that's why we kept it at 0.5, because that's what we had budgeted for. But we just didn't have anyone apply for either in the last year. Other questions on the high school stuff?
I'd say just keep watching that power. The more we can get, the better, especially if we get funding.
Again, hopefully we'll know in the next, if not this week, next week. Okay. Otherwise, I was just gonna talk through kind of where we're at as far as what we think's gonna happen at the legislation. Again, a lot is projected to come through in the next 2 weeks. If you remember what I shared last month with revenue projections, I'll just review this again. I haven't put any new money into this yet. I know, like I said, the House has passed their version of the bill, which was a 4% on the student formula. I want to see what comes out of the Senate, because they had a higher percentage of 5%, so I want to see where that falls before I put that in. I've roughly calculated, but hopefully when I show you this at our May board meeting, I know a little better number and can give you updated revenue projections. So I still have this based on last year's formula, where you can see the difference. Last year at this time we were at 15,335,783. This year, using the same formula, which I know will change, but it's at 13,687,337,000. We have heard from most of our federal sources, so most of that's in. It's really just waiting on what the state government's gonna do. But that's what kind of starts my math problem. Just so you kind of know where I'm at. So the difference of that, those two numbers I just read off to you, is about $1,648,446. I'm projecting as of today, the state's gonna add between things that they've talked about and maybe some things where the money that they're giving is specifically targeted to something, roughly $800,000. It could be more than that. I don't think it'll be less than that, but I'm using that number just for a starting point. Hopefully, again, when we get to the April or the May board meeting, that number is more precise. The Senate number is higher than that. The House number is a little higher than that, but the House number had some, you have to spend some of this money on XYZ, so I didn't factor that in. This would be kind of the money that isn't tied to something right now. Last year when the budget was built, with our remaining COVID dollars, there was about $423,000 that was earmarked for financial health for the 23-24 school year. So that's where that number came from. So taking that 1.6-ish million dollars and subtracting the 800,000, subtracting the 423,000, that's where I got the 425,446. So things that we are considering, or things maybe we've already done. We approved the capital budget in there. I put it back in there from last month. We did that last month and approved that. When running it compared to last year's number and this year's number, that saved about $80,000, $80,441. Some things that we have on the list, we haven't necessarily done all these. These are things that I'd like to get some feedback on. So the first list, some of the feedback of things that we either added late last year or off budget. We could look at removing the activity bus. We could look at, we had a bus driver resign this spring, and when I was talking with Sarah, she thought if she knew we were gonna have one less bus driver to start the school year, she could reroute our current bus routes and make it work. Right now, it's very hard to make it work because the routes are set and times are set, and we don't wanna change everyone's bus schedule with about 6 weeks left of school. But she thought going into a new school year, if we weren't able to fill that or couldn't fill that she could make our bus routes work with one less bus driver. So far, we've had no one apply for that position, up to this point to help us for this year, so that could be a place where we could find some savings. At the very end of the last budget year, last year, we did add another counselor position. That's another position we could look to, move from or not have next year, and then the reason that may work is with some restructuring of job duties that we have for next year. We've hired a new social worker, but the current social worker is our Indian Education Program Coordinator. The social worker next year will have a role with it, but won't be in charge of it. Won't be the one building the budget, building the programming. We'll be able to free up and go to the 4 schools a little bit more often. So that could be a place where we could look at some savings. Ms. Hinckley talked about reducing a teacher at the high school. Our activity budget, as of right now, is about $61,000 under what was budgeted for last year. Mandy's still working on that and looking to find some more savings, but that came in under budget compared to last year. Smart mentors were positions we added with COVID dollars. We could look to move on and not have those positions. We also added at the very end of, or very beginning of this school year, a mental health provider for staff and students that was used with COVID dollars. Ms. Hinckley talked about 6 assignments. Those are, right now, if a teacher does that, the contract right now pays a teacher about $3,000 to do that. She has reduced about 5, maybe even a little more than 5, but I left a little room in there for right now, just in case as registration happens. Numbers always do change once we build that master schedule. Numbers always do fluctuate, how many kids take certain classes, so those are reduced by about 5. And I'm not saying everything on that list should be, I'm just saying if those first 11 things all happened, again, some of them have already, starting at that 425,000, if everything in that next 11 happened, that would bring us behind at 11,467. The next list are just positions that we added during the COVID period. I'm not recommending we move on from these positions at this time. I'm not recommending any of that. I'm just wanting to say these are positions that we did add during COVID with the COVID dollars that we know are expiring. And those other positions, other than the ones that we talked about in the top, was we added a staff in the district office. We added during COVID the Hinckley Elementary Dean of Students. We added a second nurse position. If we chose to reduce all those, and I'm not recommending that right now, but if we did, and including the 11 above, we would now be $142,621 under this projection up here where I started at 420. Again, I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying these are the positions we added during COVID, and we know our COVID dollars are expiring. What I will add is I don't think it would be best for any of our buildings to reduce every single one of those. Is we added them, even though we used COVID dollars, we added each and every one of these positions for a reason, and I feel like good reasons. And I really don't want to see any of our buildings go to kind of skeletal staff. We have good staff, we have staff that are doing great things, and we have needs in our district that I think we'd be possibly very much hurting, especially some of these more than others, obviously, but all these positions are very valuable to our kids. We do have to make some tough decisions as of right now, but certainly we also added all these positions because there is a need, and these people are doing great things with our kids. So I'll circle then back to the very beginning. Why did I bring up activity bus? And I did pull rough data. I'll have more precise data at the May board meeting. And you guys don't have this, I just pulled this today, so it is up on the board. Our activity route is higher than last year, and I'll break this down by the trip for you when we get to our May board meeting. But you can see in October we had roughly 40 kids ride, November 94, December 59, and so on. You can kind of see our numbers. The numbers are, I don't know what that average is per day yet, which is what we talked about early this school year. I'll get that for you, but I will say ridership is higher. However, I would like to prefer, or I'd like to prioritize keeping staff. If we get down to and we have to make some tough decisions, I think, at least from my lens, it'd be better to keep as many staff as we can, because they work with every kid every day. Yes, the activity bus is doing a good thing for kids who especially don't live in the town of Hinckley, and I understand that, but if we have to make some tough decisions, that's why I have activity route as one of the considerations on our list. Is just I'd like to prioritize our staff over staff that are going to every kid every day than activity route that isn't going to every kid every day. I've talked a lot I have some more in there, but I wonder if there's any questions on any of those or any wonderments, any feedback. And then before I get to the last kind of part of this part of the agenda.
We had a lot of negative feedback when we considered quitting the activity bus, didn't we?
Kim, do you remember how many? I don't remember a lot of phone call. We had a couple parents come to a board meeting, 2 or 3 if I remember correctly. I don't remember if phone calls were coming in up to that point. I know we had some citizens come to the board meeting and speak for that. I know some of you took phone calls when we were at that point, or emails. So yes, there was feedback to keep it or bring it back. Just again, why I have it on the list is just you see a lot of, not names, but positions that I guess that's why I had it up for a consideration.
I don't think it was communicated either when the activity bus got cut last year at our May budget meeting, that it wasn't communicated to the parents going even into fall sports. And I think the frustration came from there too.
Are we the only school that has an activity bus?
That's what was said last year. I will find that out. I'll reach out at least to our neighbors before we make this decision. I believe we're the only one left that does an activity route. That's what was said all last year. I believe that to be true, but I will find out at least from our neighbors if anyone else does.
And we probably have one of the larger geographically.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Districts too.
Especially up to Finlayson and east or west, and especially out east this way.
One thing on the activity bus, they used to have volunteers. They actually took their own car. I don't know if, they have.
Insurance.
Yeah, I don't know if liabilities and things like that are an issue, but.
Anything on those, maybe first 11 or next, any of those positions that you want me to gather more information on, or you think, whoa, what are you thinking? Just any feedback on any of those, good, bad, indifferent, or wonderments, or.
On that second nurse position too, didn't we add that because our full-time nurse was overwhelmed?
While I've been here, we've probably gone through 4 nurses, maybe that. And we added it, obviously during COVID, there was a lot of stuff that was happening in the nurse's office with all the testing, all the kids being sick, staff being sick. With the state requirement says you have to have 1 nurse for every 1,000 kids, but we have a lot of kids, especially at the elementary levels, who are in those offices still, even though COVID's gone. Then you throw the nurses also doing some special ed requirements in there. And, if they're spending time doing special ed requirements during the workday, then they're not necessarily seeing kids who are sick or dealing with the things that come up. And we have kids that use the nurse's office for a lot of things, especially at the elementary levels, but high school too. And it is a very busy position, and it has burned some nurses out. And so it was added not only because of COVID, but also the workload is a big job.
The one position that there's multiple on here that I would really like to see stay, because they're all important, but I think one that would really hurt the school would be losing the dean of the elementary
Agree.
That would just put so much more on Bonnie, you know, and yeah, so that's a position that I would like to
Yeah.
not have to talk about.
And I know in my time, not just Bonnie, but the principals before her asked for deans. I mean, this has been a need probably since I've been here as well, and we finally got it, which is awesome, and Mr. Lattimore does amazing. But
And every
agreed.
student in the
Yeah.
elementary is benefiting. And like last year, you know,
I'm calling you?
Yeah.
How was that?
For no.
for the activity row, like I was, you know, one that thought, let's bring that back so
Yeah.
that every student can play sports if they
Right.
want to, but looking at it this way, it is only servicing certain of our
Right.
students, so.
I'm a big believer of the dean of students. I hear nothing but good about him, so.
Yeah, so that's just one of the major ones that I would like to see.
And just now that Keith has a few months under his belt, have you talked to him? I mean, because there's bus drivers on here, I mean, there's
Yep.
a great department, has that been?
Yep, he's doing a work study for some of the things as well. I thought we had added a custodial staff during COVID, we hadn't. But he is doing some work study, especially at the high school side. We added a staff member when we built the new addition at the high school, but we didn't add a custodial staff during COVID position. I also talked to Sarah Severson. She didn't feel, especially with moving to free lunches, that reducing staff, you know, with free lunches, more kids are likely to eat. That, you know, making changes there was ideal either. But Keith is looking at a work study for some of his staff.
Yeah, I figure food service is probably gonna.
I would assume the demand of how many kids eat will go up, especially with it being free next year.
In counselors, we have 3 right now, right?
We have 3 now and a social worker. If we did reduce, we'd go back to 2, one at the high school, one at the elementary level, and a social worker.
I think that would make sense in my opinion versus the dean or some of the other stuff.
You want me to keep going, or is there more feedback on that stuff? So other things, budget-wise, to keep in mind, it's also a negotiation year, and we would like to give raises to our staff. Joanne's working on getting me a rough dollar amount. Of course, we don't know what negotiation's going to do, but she's working on, we know everyone's gonna get another step in the contract, and then kind of trying to best guesstimate what negotiations may do. So I hope to have a little bit more of that information when we get to the May board meeting. But our school psychologist is retiring. We've been trying to post probably since January, and we haven't been able to find live, I shouldn't say live, a person who wants to. In-person school psychologist. So the recommendation from Scred and working with Kim, Bonnie, and I is to hire on a virtual school psychologist. We are able to still look for an in-person school psychologist, but they're just not applying for the position. Moving to a virtual school psychologist does have a little bit more cost for salary, and because we're using a company. But the part that would have the biggest add is in order for that school psych to give the services to the kids and do some of the assessments. They don't have necessarily access to all 1,000 kids, not that it's all 1,000, but they wouldn't have access to all the kids, so we need to have a paraprofessional kind of be that person that gets the kids, the testing materials that the school psych would need, and be that facilitator between student and school psych. So that would be a paraprofessional ad that we'd have to have. We're trying to find out how that works, sharing that among 4 buildings. It wouldn't be an ad at each building, but if it's just one ad, do they just travel with the school psych based on their schedule, or how does that work? Especially, you know, we have some school psych needs up at Finlayson, Hinckley Elementary here, just how does that travel work with that? But we are gonna have to have a paraprofessional ad with that. Bonnie and we talked a little bit about adding that paraprofessional ad. We're building that into our budget right now. So we know what that would do for our costs versus revenue. So right now, we are building in that paraprofessional in to help cover the VPK and the 3 and 4 year olds up at Finlayson. The other part, we won't know for sure. We're getting closer, but it's still end of April. By the time we get to June, we could very well have some more COVID dollars. The way the budget was built this year was to put, other than that 423 I talked about at the beginning of the meeting, all the remaining COVID money was put in to make sure this year's budget balanced. We are doing a little better. Some of it's because we haven't been able to hire some of the positions we had looked for, yet we did also do some good things with insurance for staff and things like that. You saw at the last meeting, we are still, last month, we've spent less than where we are in the year, meaning we were at about 75% and we had spent about 72, we were 3% under that, so 72% of our budget had been spent. So we're doing okay. However, we don't know what's still gonna come up in the next 2 months. There could be more COVID dollars. The hard part with COVID dollars, even if there's more there, is that still helps us for 1 year. You know, it's hard to sustain that, but also we're facing some tough decisions that may help for 1 year, knowing that the state is also projecting to give us more money for the following school year. And early runs of that could be between $900,000 and $1 million more on top of what they give this year. The hard part with the COVID money is I'm not gonna know until we get probably into June and we're submitting that final budget. And even then it's gonna be an educated best guess until we get to June 30th and everything is kind of wrapped up. The educated best guess is getting better each month, but that's still kind of where I'm at right now. And you know, if big things come up, that COVID money kind of helps us with those big things because it can be spent on, you know, there's not necessarily rules for some of the COVID funding. So that could still end up being a positive for us, we just don't know yet. The other part that I wanted to talk about, if you remember back when we did our audit in December, and that was the link I had in here, and sorry for those of you in the audience, it's probably gonna come in the clearest, but at the end of this June, and again, it's projected, we don't know for sure what could come up, but we're projected in December to have a fund balance a little bit over $5 million. Our fund balance is based on these first 3 categories: general fund, food service, and community service. These other ones, you have to have funds tied to them, so when we calculate our fund balance, it's that top right number versus the first 3 in this column, general, food service, and community service. So that's where, whoa, that got really small. That's where I got the 16,046,395 was just adding those first 3 numbers together. So our projected fund balance for June 30th of this year was predicted, again, this was back in December, to be about 31.6%. Our policy, district policy, is to keep the fund balance at 25%. And then if it dips under 25% and we get to 15%, then there'd be mandated cuts. My wonder to the board is, would you be comfortable with me coming in closer to a fund balance at 25%? If I came in right at 25% based on these projections, which again, it's hard to project exactly what those numbers would be right now, but based on the audit's projections, if I came in right at a 25% fund balance, that could have a difference of near $1 million. Similar to the COVID money, using fund balance isn't always sustainable. It helps us, you know, maybe keep some things that we want to keep, and knowing that the state may come through with, again, more dollars for the following school year, but it would help keep some of those positions that, you know, we had on that, and still be within our policy of 25%. I wouldn't say I would come in perfectly up, because we want to have a little bit of, in case things come up, but would the school board feel comfortable if I came in closer to 25% instead of at that 31.5%? So I was looking for a little feedback on that as I'm looking at our revenue and building the budget. Your feelings on, do we want to stay at 30%, or are you comfortable if I'm closer to 25? as I build next year's budget.
My thought, is, maybe we could meet in the middle, because I feel, the middle section, to me, I think those all have to stay. The top, I think if we got constructive and brainstormed, there could be things that are cut, and not get our fund balance back down to 25. I think it would be nice to maybe meet in the middle.
Okay.
Is my opinion. Just because I think there's some things up on the top there that, we can cut.
And I know you've given us this information, I think maybe it was a couple of months ago. Have we ever been close to that 25% before?
Well, it depends how you look, so how it was built before is what Mr. Prater did, was took the fund balance but built it to the next budget. So it just saved some, so it always looked like we were in the mid to upper 20s, when really we've probably been at 30% when you do the actual fund balance. It's a conservative way in case things come up, then you're not going off budget. So he'd take our fund balance and put it to the projected next year budget, just because typically our budget goes up. It saves a little bit of extra. So we've been living probably in the mid-20s. I don't know that we've ever been below 25% that I can remember since I've been here, but we've been at 26, 27%. This is probably at 31.5. If that's where we come in, it's probably the highest that I can remember it being. I can go back and check. I don't remember coming in the end of the school year in the 30%, maybe 27, 28, but.
Well, because I'm just thinking, well, if we can keep some of these things on here, especially like Jody said, the ones in the middle for sure. And if it helps, anything to help our students and staff, I mean, and we can do it, why, then we should, I think.
I mean, obviously in the top section, I can't imagine reducing a high school teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, that just, it's just my opinion.
Well, and hopefully too, when the state and helps come back, that will hopefully go in our favor.
I should add one more point. And maybe I'll have more than one, but there are some other other things that the legislation's talking about that are very good, but if they don't come through with helping school districts fund some of these things, it's gonna be very hard on our budget. And I just don't know where those are. I mean, just doing some rough math earlier on some of the things we're looking at. Again, and they're very good for the employees or the students, the things they're talking about, but if they don't tie some extra funding to it, you know, it could be another $250,000 to $300,000. How are we gonna figure this out? So,
Especially the unemployment.
yeah,
Yes.
which that's the hard part. Yes, these are good things that they're talking about, but they've gotta help not just our districts across the state. How do we cover some of those needs if they pass? So again, the next 2 weeks are gonna tell a lot, but I'm hoping we don't have to come back and figure that part out too, but that it's still a possibility as of where the legislation is today.
Brian, do they keep track of various schools' fund balance?
Yep, it's all, so after school districts do their audit, they have to be submitted to MDE, and I can run that. You guys have seen a report, we probably did that back in November, just, yes, long story short.
A lot of different schools.
Yes.
So if you have large fund balance, do they say, well, I guess you don't need funding? I mean, is that a possibility?
I have not heard that.
I mean, do they look at it and say, we can add and make them do this because they got the money in the bank already?
I haven't heard that come from the states, that, hey, you have more, so we're gonna, because we are doing better than a lot of school districts,
I mean, is it an unspoken thing, do you think, or?
Not that I've heard. Not that I've heard. And like I said, we are doing better than some other districts. Some other districts run under 15% of a fund balance. I wouldn't recommend necessarily doing that, but you know, we are fiscally healthier than a lot of school districts around us.
One other question too. I know we had talked before to even maybe possibly selling some land that the school doesn't even use to cover some of that.
I was gonna bring that, I talked with another board member about that today, and I'll bring that list to you guys in May. Here's our land, here's what it is or is not used for, and do you wanna consider any of that? I don't know what market value is for some of our property, but.
I might know a thing or two.
Okay,
about that.
perfect.
Just a little.
I think what Dave said actually happened to our school district a number of years ago.
Really?
I don't remember what years it was, but I don't believe we had the funding that some schools got because
Right.
we had too much.
I think during like 2008, during
I
the
don't remember
recession,
years,
they were like, the state was using your fund balance to get their stuff in order.
Right, and I don't know what it costs
Borrowed
us.
against that, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's not supposed to happen, but I think it did.
Yeah. It was funny math they were doing.
And the COVID money that we have coming, do we have that already?
We have it already, some of
Okay.
it, so there were many different pockets, if you
Yep.
remember, some of it, we wrote a plan, we have to spend it the way it was written into the plan. Part of it, we can use on anything, so right now, we're kinda hanging on to that, cause there's no rules per se, or we didn't have to write a plan for it, we're waiting to see kinda what happens, or if we can carry it into next year. So yes, we have it.
Okay.
It was, like I said, put into this year's budget to make sure we're balanced this year. We're doing okay right now.
I think the Minneapolis paper today had, the federal government is gonna try to recoup some of the COVID money, so.
If it's not, we'll spend it.
Okay.
We will spend
Okay.
it.
Good.
No, by the end of next school year, it will all be
Okay.
spent. If it's not already spent this year, but we will make sure we utilize all that money
Okay.
that we got.
I do have a question. Just looking at the school's policy number 705, it talks about the unreserved general operating fund balance and how it's defined. It's the sum of the balances in the general, food service, and community service funds. Well, food service money, historically, that's the lunch money that the kids write checks for, right?
Correct. And what the state and federal government give us, yep.
Do the auditors say that money is considered unreserved when it's for the purpose of food? Okay. And I'm just looking at the MSBA fund balance policy, their model policy, they don't even have unreserved as a term in their classification of fund balances. They have 5 classifications, which are non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. I guess I would like to see us take it a step further and let's get a model policy or a policy that matches up with MSBA's policy. I just feel like our policy is confusing and we have terms that are not even part of this model policy.
Historically, since I've been here, our fund balance has always helped community ed and food service. If we don't get all the payments in from families and things like that, it's helped make sure that we balance out those accounts. I believe that's why those two are written in here. Maybe Leo, not to put you on the spot, but that's my understanding why we have it written in for community ed. And our food service is especially food services, the best we can. We try to collect this money. We don't always get it all, but we have to balance that budget when it comes to the end of the year. So I believe that's why historically we have had food and community ed in
had
there.
fairly large numbers, I think close to 100,000 maybe in 1 year, 75 to 100.
75 sounds about right, some years. So that's my understanding of why we have those two in there, is because we have to balance those out at the end of the year, and I believe it's happened enough where that's why it got written into policy.
So will free lunches affect our current school policy fund balance percentage reserve?
The state hasn't come out yet with how much they're going to give. I mean, could it? Yes. During COVID, when the federal government was paying for it, we didn't have to back from the fund balance to fill food service. We haven't heard yet what the state is going to give each school district and how that's going to be based, whether it's, the state recommendation was $3.30 a meal. They haven't come out with those details yet. And then are they taking out those who do qualify for free and reduced? We haven't seen the formula yet, how the schools will be paid that. So I don't know that answer quite yet.
Is it breakfast too?
Breakfast and lunch, yeah.
But the staff does not qualify, that they
Staff
do
does
other
not
states,
qualify,
okay?
correct. And usually by the end of the year, our staff absolutely take care of them. I'm not worried about our staff, but. Questions on anything I had in any of this before we jump way topic to the last couple on here? Otherwise, Jessica, so we've talked a lot about, that we're gonna have a new website. Jessica and, her staff have started building our new website, so I just wanted to give you guys the first sneak peek of what it would look like. It's not done yet, they're still working on it, but Jess, I'll let you talk through anything you wanna highlight, and then
Yeah.
take any feedback you guys have on what you think so far.
So we picked this layout because it's actually really clean. I know a lot of you navigate our current website for policies and information, and I felt it to be really overwhelming and cluttering. Even when I started, I'm like, whew, this is confusing. And from a parent's perspective, I'm always like, where's the school calendar, you know? So the lunch menus are there, and they're all really easily accessible. I think that's probably the most I get is those lunch menus. And the upcoming events, that was actually, the DO staff was like, we like that. We saw it on East Central site, so they were like, we need that. I'm like, okay. So we added those, and policies are on there, and under the district, which Bonnie just found me a typo. So if you do find typos, let me know, because that's all hand entered by myself and Michelle. And it's, I feel like it's a little more streamlined and a lot cleaner, but yes, please, if you have feedback, we are very open to changing. It's very simple, and we want to get as much content out there as possible and get this out to our community and our parents and staff, so they're not missing anything.
When are you hoping to do the rollover? July?
Yeah, I think honestly, that's way conservative.
Okay.
I know Michelle's been really diligent about getting it, when she even has a free minute, that's what she's doing, is putting that content out there. So I'm hoping sooner than July, but that's probably the end.
I like the ones on the bottom that have to be on our website are on the first page.
Yes, yeah.
So that you don't have to go searching for them.
Right.
Or that we have to post.
Yes, yeah, and what's really cool about this platform is you can set an expiration date. So you can make the page, and you can say, oh, the community ed's not gonna be having a class after May 2nd, and that post will just take down on its own. So we don't have to remember to go back out and we gotta re-clean up that site. When we build the page, we just say May 2nd, it's done. We don't have to worry about it anymore. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice, because otherwise our calendars are filled with, oh, I need to remember to change this, or, yeah. What I really like is you can segment pages and give out rights to certain people. So technically, if I wanted Brian to manage our policies, I could just give him that page, and he could edit just that page. And we could do that before, but it follows the new ADA compliancy, and it's really simplistic, and we can keep it all very manageable. So it's been a fun learning experience for Michelle and I. So we've been building along.
Questions or any other feedback you want to give Jess?
Very nice.
I like the website, it's really
Thank
nice.
you. Good. Yeah, I can't wait to actually get it out to the community, and I like clicky stuff.
You get the pictures with the snow taken off.
I know, we were taking them out, but the sky is so pretty blue. We were like, look at that one. I'm like,
The snow, can we get rid of the snow?
We'll get spring pictures eventually.
One quick question though,
Yes.
too, and I don't know, and maybe we don't even do it anymore.
No.
I know before, they used to do daily announcements. I don't know, does the high school do that anymore?
We actually do daily announcements in Schoology for the students.
Okay.
But
It's not all information transfers from students to parents.
That's a very good point.
But I have experience with that.
Right. And most of it is like what lunch is today and what, what sports are happening, and early release day I think is mentioned often, and a lot of the students have found that to be very valuable. We could do an announcements page here's what's happening today on that main page, easy.
Because sometimes things would pop up and then I'd ask my kids like, oh, so this is coming up, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's
Yeah.
always good. to
No,
have
that's
that.
a good idea. Like the powwow would have been a really nice, here's what's happening today at our district, at our high school, and that's a good idea. Yeah, we could do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the last one that I had on the agenda is, wanted to give you guys early heads up, but it's probably likely gonna come down to a vote for our Great River Conference superintendents. Our conference, we believe a formal application is gonna come in from Mora, Aiken, and Crosby Ironton to join the Great River Conference. Some pros is some of those are closer than some of the other school districts that we do travel to. Some cons, that are bigger than us, at least Crosby, Ironton, and Mora. One of the things that the conference ADs are talking about is that would bring us to 10 teams in our conference. One of the ideas they're talking about is taking the 5 largest school districts, which right now we're number 5, and the 5 smallest, and having like 2 different, a big school and a small school conference, all under the Great River Conference, but there'd be 2 conference champions, a small school side and a big school side. We believe reading the bylaws, and Bonnie may have some opinions as a former AD, but we believe reading the bylaws that the superintendents, eventually the 8 superintendents, get a vote, but I wanted to get school board feedback. Mandy's working on coaches' feedback. I'm also gonna get coaches' feedback from our school, and each superintendent and school district's gonna do that before a vote happens. It wouldn't be for next school year. It would be for the 24-25 school year. We believe 2 of the school districts, I believe it's Aiken and Crosby, so Bonnie, maybe you can help me as a former AD. School district, so I believe it's Crosby and Aiken's conference is disbanding, so they have to find a new conference. They've already reached out to 2 other conferences who have told them no. If the Great River Conference tells them no, then the Minnesota State High School League places those 2 schools. Mora is still in a conference, they're just looking for a change because geographically it's closer for them to be here than where they currently travel. But I believe Crosby and Aiken, even if our conference says no, could still be placed into our conference based on how the high school league would dictate that, and I don't know all those rules. But
They have to apply to the conferences and be denied.
Yeah.
And then they can only be placed in one of the conferences that they've applied to be into. That was the last reading that I've heard.
Those 2 schools have applied twice, have been denied twice. Our ADs believe all 3 of these schools are gonna apply if we say no to, especially, and it's not all for one for all, we approve each one individually. But if Crosby and Aiken get denied by us, then the high school league will step in and decide for them. Mora, if we say no, they still have to go through the process of 2 other conferences, but I'm looking for early feedback. They haven't even set a vote for when the superintendents will do this. We believe it will be in the summer when we do this, as the formal application hasn't even come in yet. But I know those 3 schools went to the last AD meeting to kind of make their pitch to the ADs. So it's coming, but looking for initial feedback from the board level, or things that I could have Mandy look into, or I could gather from other superintendents.
One question. I know for a lot of sports, obviously you gotta play each conference opponent, once,
Yeah.
twice?
Depends on the sport.
Yeah,
So how does that?
the last proposal I saw, especially if they went big, small, you'd play everyone if you're a small school, you'd play each of those twice and cross over to the big side once. The big schools would play each other twice, go over to the small side once. So you'd play everyone in the conference, but you'd play your like size 2 times. You'd play the opposite size just once. And I'm guessing if the years you play them just once, that would alternate the following year to the other site. When you play them twice, you obviously get 1 home, 1 away, but.
Well, I'd say there's some travel?
It would, cause sometimes we
Go
drive,
to international balls.
Well, you'd be going to Aiken and Crosby every year for basketball, for
Yeah.
boys and girls.
which we go to
We
Aiken
play
now and,
these teams anyhow.
correct, we play all
Obviously
those
not in
teams
conference
anytime.
play, but we
Right.
play all three of these teams.
Yes, we do.
So
In
they'll still be in your
different sports.
section, won't they? I mean,
Um,
are they
Crosby,
section
yeah.
teams?
Mora's a 3A, so Crosby
So
and
they leave every
Aiken would be,
section.
Crosby and Aiken, we'd still play in the section. I don't know if Aiken moved up.
They are in double
Did
A
they?
for next year, so.
So we
they are in
play
section.
Crosby and Aiken, we wouldn't play Mora in the section when it gets to sections.
So we're still 2A for
We're still 2A for,
2 years,
correct,
Forever.
forever.
for football, for boys and girls basketball, volleyball, baseball and softball.
And football's different, cause that's district, so that doesn't mean
Baseball and
anything for
softball will
this.
change
This
for
is
next year.
volleyball, basketball, cross country, golf. Football's on its own.
Yeah, they schedule their own per district.
Did I hear correctly that Aiken was once interconference and then
Yeah.
they
Aiken
wanted
was
out?
once in, they wanted out. It's, at the
So
time
now-
it was, we weren't competitive enough and here they are wanting to come back in.
So what I think was location too at that time,
Yeah.
I mean, cause that wasn't that long ago, cause I was still AD.
You were
when they
AD
pulled
then,
out,
yeah.
When they pulled out of our conference.
Yeah,
So what's the
that's-
advantage of having one conference with 10 teams and you split them up anyway? Like what's,
Having, especially if you're one of the smaller schools, having a chance to still get a conference championship where typically bigger school, more kids to choose from, more, you're just, the numbers are such a difference.
I mean, why wouldn't it be 2 separate?
Sections.
Conferences.
Yeah, like why would you, you have 2 champions?
Are there other conferences?
Yeah, I know, is it the Polar League? I mean,
Polar League.
Polar League has, I don't know if they call it north-south, but especially in
It's
football,
big
they have.
school,
So it's a normal.
big school, small school is what they call it.
Yeah.
So this isn't abnormal to
No.
want to do this.
Mississippi 8 used to have east-west, they were all like-sized schools, but they would split them east and west, and you'd play your closest 2 times, and you go cross over to the further ones once, so it is, conferences do it.
How far away is, cause I don't think maybe I'm wrong, I don't remember the girls playing Crosby Arrington in basketball. How far away is Crosby Arrington?
80 miles roughly.
It's still not.
Oh,
Very
so
rough.
it's very, it's the
Aiken.
other side of the
Okay.
range.
It's like 15 miles from Aiken.
Okay, that's not.
Close to international, right?
Closer than,
Yeah.
And Northwoods
That's
and
what I
Nassau.
closer than some places
That's
we
my
go,
football.
yes. But we went to Crosby this year, we went to Aiken this year, I mean, we do travel to these schools
Is
already.
there any like cons to doing it? Like,
Competition,
Comp-
those 3 teams
Typically
have
bigger
more
schools, tougher competition, not that tougher competition's bad, but they just have more kids, so more to choose from. And maybe less times numbers don't dictate that, but
right,
Well,
Well,
coaching,
sometimes it allows less opportunity to play outside the conference too, when you have more teams like that. Cause basketball, you can get 26 games, but in volleyball, you can't have that many. So if you have to play a district team so many times, or a conference team, then you get less opportunity to get outside your conference, so you can get some of those sections,
section games then.
you get section games.
and vice versa, you already have games already set up, so you know you've got, if it was basketball, you'd have,
It's an easier schedule.
right, you'd have 12 or whatever it is games set up that you already know, that you don't have to go try and find teams to play, because sometimes it's hard to find 26 teams.
As an ex-AD, what, do you have opinion? Good, bad, or indifferent?
I think 10 would be tough, but I guess it depends on how willing they're wanting to look at the Constitution, right, and see how many, if they already kinda have it set, like 2 for each small school and 1 for big school.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably looked at the numbers, that would be the biggest thing is if you're able to get outside of your conference and get some additional
Right.
competition or
a
like.
benefit for our kids if they split it is more opportunity for all conference and honorable mention, where if they keep it one big conference, maybe there's not as much opportunity depending where you fall in that conference, so if they do split it,
The worst smack dab in the middle.
true, we're either the biggest of the big or the small, or
Yeah, that would be the
Small.
interesting part is where do we land on that?
it's
It'd always
really
be
us
the
and Rush
smallest and the
City are
big.
right there.
Yep,
Right.
The 16
And that would
have
be-
more of an advantage
that'd be
than
tough.
us,
Cause we're about
which is
40, 50 kids bigger than the next school, which is what, Bram?
think Brandon's the next one.
Are
so-
there districts that do, or conferences that do split like that? I've
But
never,
you-
I've just
Yeah.
never been
The
involved.
Polar League does it.
So if there was a
Moose Lake,
Center's all
Esco,
And they have a big.
Silver Bay,
allow them to come
Cook
in,
County.
could they like next year or
I don't,
whatever,
I don't
just
have
say,
any
okay,
experience with that.
just kidding, I don't wanna be in here?
Once they're locked in, I think they're locked in for, Bonnie, do you know that if they get approved?
I have no idea.
I guess I don't know the vol,
I
I
guess
can
it-
find that out. I would assume they're locked in for at least 2 years?
So I was just wondering,
I would
like, if
say
we
at
allow them
least
to
two.
come
I
in,
mean,
could they just
the
say,
kids only
oh,
been
well,
out for
just kidding,
probably,
They probably can hold
I think-
6, maybe?
but if other
I
schools
would
already
Crosby and
told them
Aiken would
no,
probably
then
have to
That's
be
a lot
set.
of work for them then to back out. I can't imagine that they just say.
Especially if they're having
schools
more
already
time
told
Yeah.
them
Right now,
no,
no.
and we're like a third choice.
Where are they gonna go? The cities?
Right.
And my guess is the high
I
school
only asked 'cause they
steps.
wanted to know, sorry.
No, that's okay. If the high school league steps in, I'm guessing they're gonna place probably by geography, would be my guess.
More would probably come here.
Yeah, that would be my guess, but especially knowing we already have Pine City in our conference, but
Tough for the small schools, that's what it'll be, tough for,
Mm-hmm.
for the Mille Lacs, for
Yeah.
East Central, it'll be really tough for them to compete with Aiken and Crosby Barrington.
Do you foresee, I mean, do you see anything as far as having these other schools in our conference where, cause they have more kids and everything, where if we get beat by a lot, where other kids would be like, you know what, I'm not gonna play.
it could be a factor. Yeah. Absolutely could be.
I think that happens right now,
I think,
honestly.
yeah.
I think it has happened in the last 3 years.
I think a lot depends on like your team, like,
Unfortunately.
It's a good idea for fine arts though, cause you get more, activity type stuff for the fine arts piece of that too, so, and we're just looking at the sports, but it's also
Yeah, like
fine arts that you
speech,
get
band,
with this as
choir.
well.
Yep,
So,
so for those, it's a benefit,
Yeah.
more
Knowledge bowl, you'll
competition.
be.
Knowledge bowl.
Yeah, that'd be a big
your choir, your band
Speech.
ensembles get more opportunities.
A good point.
In football, you could end up playing more and get beat up and.
This wouldn't affect football, football does its own,
Okay.
We
we're
still
not-
could,
I
we
mean,
still could
it
play
could,
more,
but,
Okay.
but we're not in the Great River Conference for football,
Right.
per
Okay.
se. Well, I'll update you as I learn more, I don't, like I said, they haven't said when the vote's gonna happen, I would anticipate this summer, but I'll update, if I know more in May, I'll update you more in May, and Randy and I will talk with our coaches and get their feedback, and we'll go from there. Yeah, that's all I have tonight.
Does anybody have any last minute questions? Okay. Then it looks like May will have more answers and probably more
Hopefully.
questions.
Probably. Hopefully some answers, definitely some questions.
Thank you.